All engineers, myself included, have horror stories of bad interview processes. The interviewers didn't test real-world knowledge, there was no interest shown, and the whole process was extremely slow. What most startups don't realize is that the interview process is a great way to differentiate yourself from your competitors, and the best run processes will close the best candidates. At my startup Tap Commerce, we were a small team of 3 engineers and no one had ever heard of us. At Twitter, I had a larger team and more resources, but our stock price had started to dip and we were losing engineers to companies across the street like Uber or Facebook. But what I realized was that the interview process was something I could use to my advantage. The most important thing you want to do is test their real-world skills. The best way I've seen to do this is to actually bring in candidates for a multi-day workshop where they work closely with you and the team on real tasks. You should compensate the engineers for their time. If this is not possible due to budget, then consider doing a take-home assignment for the candidate. But you should set guidelines. How much time should this take? What are the coding standards? You don't want the candidate to stress out too much for this project. For your initial phone screen of the candidate, do 3 things. First, gauge the behavioral and cultural fit of the candidate. Second, describe your long-term vision of the product and business to the candidate. And third, do some light tech skill vetting to make sure they meet at least a standard bar. If you're not able to do an in-person workshop with the candidate, then it's okay to do 1 day of interviews. This is what I recommend for 3 interviews. First, do a technical breadth interview with the candidate. The purpose of this is to touch on a wide variety of tech topics and understand the breadth of experience that the candidate has. For the second interview, I recommend a technical depth interview. The purpose of this interview is to go deep with the candidate based on their experience. Understand their prior project experience. What was the level of complexity of the challenges that they actually solved? The third interview is a top grading interview. This should be done by yourself or a fellow founder. The purpose of this interview is to gauge cultural fit of the candidate and make sure that their career goals match your role. Have the interviewers be the actual engineers that the candidate would work with on a team in the future. Large companies typically don't do this, so this is a great way where you can differentiate yourself if you're small. If your team is large enough, I recommend having 2 interviewers in the room. This is helpful because in case the candidate gets stuck on a problem, the second interviewer can step in and help guide the candidate back on track. Also, the interviewers can share feedback with each other on how they themselves performed so that they can improve as interviewers. After all the interviews have completed, the interviewers should meet on the same day, have a huddle, and decide whether or not to move forward. And then on the next day, give the candidate an offer, or if you're not moving forward, give them some feedback on why and offer to help in another way. Remember, candidates are like your customers, regardless of if they get an offer or if they don't. And finally, most engineering interview processes look for signs of weakness so that a candidate can be rejected as quickly as possible. Don't do that. Look for signs of strength always in your candidate. If an interview is not going well, try to make it go in a different direction. Make sure you did everything you can so that the candidate could show all of their strengths. Back at Twitter, I once had a candidate who did not get an offer from us, but enjoyed our process so much that he still referred other candidates to us. If that happens to you, that's when you know you're running a good process. So remember, when interviewing engineers, seek to test their real-world skills and how it applies to the real problems your startup is facing. This can be done by in-person workshops or take-home assignments. For in-person interviews, remember, always search for signs of strength in your candidate. Treat them as if they were your customer and move as fast as you can in the process.